Hello YouTube, this is Sam Gerrans from Qur'anite.com. Today is Friday the 5th of March 2021 and I'd like to continue with my series of sort of discussions of surahs between 50 and 114, and I think we'll just jump into it and see how we go. So this today is Surah 65. Now briefly before we start, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that it begins with "O Prophet." Now, if we look to Surah 66, we find that also begins "O Prophet." So, despite the fact that the traditionalist sort of tends to make understanding the Quran very complicated, I treat it as a book as I would treat, any other book. Well, perhaps not exactly as I would treat any other book, but I look for these correlations between various surahs. I'm not forcing myself to try to understand, where was this one, supposedly revealed and in what context. No, I'm treating a book which claims to be from God, to be preserved and to be perfect, as a book that is from God, preserved and perfect, rather than as something which requires to be dragged through a prism of a much later library of stuff in order to be understood. So that's just that point. Let's continue. O Prophet, when you divorce women, divorce them after their waiting period, and count the waiting period, and be in prudent fear of God, your Lord. Turn them not out of their houses, nor let them go forth, save if they commit manifest sexual immorality. And those are the limits of God. And whoso transgresses the limits of God has wronged his soul. Thou knowest not that God might after that bring about a new matter. Now I'm going to try to get through this quite quickly, so I don't want to spend a long time on each verse, but I would just say the first thing is although this is directed to the Prophet in the first instance, it turns immediately to the masculine plural. So this is maintained through my translation by virtue of the fact that when it's talking to the masculine singular, I use thou, thee, thy, thine. So this is aimed or addressed to the whole of the community. That's the first point. The second point is it's addressed obviously to the men of the community. Now, I was going to go into quite a long discussion on how things have been destroyed now, and men are living in this tyranny, really, and it is a tyranny of weaponized women, weaponized by the state. I'm not saying women are bad, but certainly they've been given a range of buttons that they can press, and if you give people buttons, that they will press them. So men having to live in a scenario where those buttons can be pressed against them at any time, in my view, is really part of the generalized tyranny. I'm not saying that women don't have difficulties and so on, challenges, they do, but this is aimed at men as the leaders of society. And in my view, my view is that that's the natural order, but quite clearly that's the view of the Qur'an, and that's what we're discussing here. Let's continue. And when they have reached their term, retain them according to what is fitting, or release them according to what is fitting, and call to witness 2 just men from among you, and uphold the witness for God. By that is admonished he who believes in God and the last day. And whoso is in prudent fear of God, he will make for him a way out. Now, divorce is a terrible and difficult thing, and the Quran, it's one of the things that first sort of really affected me when I read it was actually the divorce and marriage laws. Both entry into and exit from marriages is a process, and I was very impressed by that, having been brought up in the degenerate West. I mean, obviously, if I'd been brought up maybe 100, 150 years ago, it might not have struck me in the same way, but living in a degenerate society, which certainly the Britain of the 1970s, 1980s was, it's nothing compared to how far it's gone now. But coming from that and seeing that it didn't work, seeing that all of the ideas foisted on everybody by feminism and communism, which is what it really is, and all the rest of it, they don't work. And now they've been utterly discredited and shown not to work. But unfortunately now everything's been broken, so it's a bit late now. But let's continue. Verse 3. And he will provide for him from where he reckoned not. And whoso places his trust in God, he is sufficient for him. God achieves his purpose. God has appointed a measure for all things. And this is a great consolation for anybody who is going through a difficult time economically, and obviously a difficult time emotionally. And divorce is both those two things. And for such of your women as despair of menstruation, if you doubt, their waiting period is 3 months, as well as for those who have not menstruated. Now, just going to quickly say this. The traditionalist, amongst his litany of impositions and worse upon the Qur'an, you will hear it said that this is talking about, it says, those who have not menstruated, that it's talking about prepubescent girls. This will be picked up, and I'm sure that you'll find a hadith somewhere that can be cited in support of that. Obviously, you'll find Christians, these types of Christians. There's quite a lot of them out there, attacking Islam and all the rest of it. And with friends like the traditionalist, you're hardly in need of enemies. I will just say that what this talks about is, and this isn't exegesis on my part. This is just the plain meaning of the text. Let's just have a quick look at it. It says, and as for such of your women, min nisaikum, of your women, okay, if you doubt, their waiting period is 3 months, as well as for those who have not menstruated. Now, women are legally competent females. The Qur'an talks about women being witnesses, women receiving property, women accepting or rejecting on the basis of their own opinion, marriage offers and so on. A woman is a legally competent female. So there are legally competent females who have not menstruated. There are reasons why a woman might not menstruate. I've talked with women who have not menstruated for long periods of time, through sickness, through hunger. There are reasons, and the Qur'an is covering that base. So to jump from that to marrying prepubescent females is violence against, not only against those females, but it's a violence against the text itself. And for those who are bearing, their waiting period is until they lay down their burden. And whoso is in prudent fear of God, he will make for him of his command ease. So it's quite clear that we have a command, but God makes through that ease. And I'm going to sort of fight against the temptation to get into a long rant about how bad things have got for men in this day and age, with the whole legal system absolutely ranged against them. No fault divorces, women just have complete carte blanche, and in a way what's happened, of course, is that men have been usurped. They're still having to pay, of course they still have to pay, but they don't get anything. They're really, I suppose, in a way, treated as sort of state-owned Johns, in the prostitute sense of the word. And the women are really like working for the pimp, and the pimp is the government. And so that's just how it works now, which is, I think, been planned, and it certainly helps to set up the kind of police state that if you can undermine leadership and unity in families, because you see, the woman is always serves someone. Women have been told they're strong and independent. I've never met one. I'm told that they exist, and I certainly accept that perhaps they do. I've just personally never met one. What I see is women serve either their boss or their husband or the state. That's what I see. I'm sure there'll be people frothing at the mouth in the comment section and saying that they're strong and independent. But that's not what I see. I'm told about them, I've read about them, and I've heard all about it. But what I see is that women are always protected by something, and some sort of male component. And that's natural. That's how it should be. But what's happened is that's been switched to Big Daddy state now, and men have been left paying the bill still, and then divorce raped afterwards, but they don't have any of the rights. It's called democracy and freedom. It's wonderful, isn't it? And just if you don't know me, if you think that I'm sort of bitter and twisted or something, I'm very happily married. But if I was single in the West, there's no way I would get married now. You'd have to be utterly mad. 80% of marriages are cancelled by women. Divorces are instigated by women. No fault divorce. I'm not happy. Who would go into a contract on that basis? You'd have to be absolutely nuts. Anyway, let's continue. That is the command of God that he sent down to you. And whoso is in prudent fear of God, he will remove from him his evil deeds and make great for him his reward. Let them dwell in what manner you dwell, out of your means, and harm them not so as to straiten them. And if they be bearing, then spend on them until they lay down their burden. Then if they suckle for you, then give them their reward. And take counsel among you according to what is fitting. And if there be difficulties between you, another shall suckle for him. Just briefly, there's nothing in here about divorce rape, about taking all of his assets and leaving him destitute and unable to recover financially. It's about financial responsibility for women, which men should take upon themselves. But the word equity is what comes to mind. But when I read this, of course, men are, according to the Qur'an, we are responsible for women. We have to provide for them and so on. But that's not what we see happening now. And also what we see happening now is the state getting involved, the state being the middleman. This isn't the time or place really to expand on this hugely, but just mentally compare what we're reading here to what happens. If you know what happens to men in the West, it's if you don't know, then you need to find out, especially if you're a young man and considering getting married. If you don't know what happens to men and you're thinking of getting married or having relations with a woman and getting her pregnant, you're basically going into a war zone, you see, armed with a banana. Okay, women, they know how it all works. By the time a woman is, about females like 16, 17, these women are way ahead of men. They've got it all worked out. In the West now, most divorces are planned before the marriage takes place. A woman is hypergamous by nature. She's going to monkey branch her way up to as high as she can get, and she's built that way, and it's right that she is that way, because she's seeking better, cleverer, stronger genes. She doesn't see it that way, but that is what's really going on. And now what's happened is she's been given the escape button at any time and told that she can be, if a woman's virtuous, this is all fine, but they're not virtuous. They haven't got the virtue of a, I don't know. I don't know if I can even express it. Women now are degenerates. If you don't understand this, they would make an 18th century prostitute blush. Okay, things are so degraded now that to go into the marriage market with the kind of preparation that most men have is, it's irresponsible. Anyway, this isn't what I kind of deal with on this channel, but if you're a young man and think you want to get married, do some proper research on what they can do to you. Legally, they can destroy you. Absolutely. And they all know this. Women all know this, okay? And the idea that they're all, sugar and spice and everything nice, no. If thank God for social media. Just go onto Instagram and just look at what they're really like, for a couple of hours. And sure, you say, well, not all women are like that. No, but most are. So if you thought you had a 90% chance of being hit by an asteroid when you went out next week, you'd buy yourself a crash helmet, right? So that's the situation. Okay, let's continue. Number 7, verse 7. Let him who has abundance spend out of his abundance, and whose provision is measured, let him spend out of what God has given him. God charges not a soul save with what he has given it. God will make after hardship ease. But this is not what you get in the West. I'm not in the West, thank God. But if you are in the West and you get divorced, you don't get ease. You get 18 years of being financially raped, having to hand over your money to a woman who's got no accountability whatsoever. She doesn't have to account for a single penny. Who knows? She's spending it on, on her boyfriends. So just comparing what this says with what, what you have to live through or live with if you're in the West. Now, what's interesting is if it moves directly from this narrative treating of divorce, verse 8, and how many a city scorned the command of its Lord and his messengers. So he called it to a stern account and punished it with a terrible punishment. And you see the tessellation, the integration of what you might call the domestic and the political. Now, in our life, we have this separation of church and state, and everything's put in separate corners. The Qur'an treats life as one whole, one organic whole, and so there is, we're given to understand that politics is one thing and the personal life is another thing. No, one is a function of the other, and there is, one grows naturally out of the other. Verse 9. So it tasted the evil consequence of its affair, and the final outcome of its affair was loss. God prepared for them a severe punishment. So be in prudent fear of God, O you men of understanding who heed warning. God has sent down to you, as a remembrance, a messenger, reciting to you the manifest proofs of God, that he might bring forth those who heed warning and do righteous deeds out of darkness into the light. And whoso believes in God and works righteousness, he will make him enter gardens beneath which rivers flow, they abiding eternally therein forever. God has made good for him his provision. Now, again, I just want to kind of draw your attention to the integration from the domestic, treating women righteously in the hardest of situations, which is divorce, and the, as it were, the political reality. And it moves on, verse 10, to talking to O you men of understanding. In our situation, everything is so warped. I'm not complaining about it. I'm just explaining, giving you a quick summary of the topology. That things are so disgusting now that, in a way, what I'm trying to get to is that the perversions and destruction of the kind of the normal human family, even sort of systems of arbitration in divorce, have now been warped to such an extent that in a way that destruction is something that I think is mirrored in the political sphere. Anyway, let's just continue. There's one verse left to go. Verse 12. God is he who created 7 heavens, and of the earth their like, the command descending between them, that you might know that God is over all things powerful, and that God has encompassed all things in knowledge. Now, it says what it says here. It says 7 heavens, and of the earth their like. Now, obviously, within the heliocentric model, this is completely impossible, because if we were 7 other Earths, spinning around in space, we'd be able to see them somewhere. My view is that the Qur'an does not support a heliocentric model at all. The Arabic is perfectly obvious, perfectly clear. God spread it out. It's all about I just attempts to try to marry this or to make this work with a modern cosmologies. It just doesn't work in my opinion, and I certainly don't see it there. So where other Earths can possibly be, in my view, is only possible on a plane, on a very large plane. But I don't want to get into the big details of that right here. That's really it. I'm going to wind that up now, and next week or next video, I hope, God willing, I'll be looking at at Surah 66. I hope everyone is well, and that's all for now. If you're listening to YouTube, you can download my full translation of the Qur'an free using the button in the top right-hand corner, or buy the hard copy there at 10% less than on Amazon. I also encourage you to sign up for the Qur'anite Plus newsletter on the site to get occasional micro updates. You can download the audio from my YouTube videos to your mobile device using the links in the drop-down below. I recommend meetquranites.com to connect with other Qur'an-alone believers. Like if you like, comment if you have something constructive to say, and subscribe to get more each week. And use the link in the drop-down below to donate if you would like to help me keep doing this. And remember, this life is short, eternity is long. If you want good trees, plant good seeds.